Good morning. I hope y'all can hear me okay. Y'all hear that okay?
You got a metallic personality.
I never do talk loud enough, so maybe we'll hear it. My eyes bother me a lot this morning. All this week, I guess, is allergies. Thought I'd ask a couple questions this morning. If you know the answer, tell me what it is. In the history of the earth, was there ever a time that man was not sinful? I was fixing to say, when they took and eat of the forbidden fruit, what time was it before they eat of the forbidden fruit? But Adam and Eve was there, and they weren't sinning at that time, were they? So what happened? So we know that there was a time, maybe. There was a time that God walked with man on earth in the evenings, enjoyed fellowship with them. He's the same guy that created everything. He created Adam and Eve in his own image. And he gave them a commandment. What was the commandment? Pretty simple, wasn't it? He gave them basically a paradise on earth to live. They didn't have to work. All they had to do was enjoy life. But he asked them to be the dominion over all things that he created. The animals, birds flew, the plants that grew. They didn't even have to till the earth. Almost like heaven on earth. He only asked them one thing not to do. But what did man do? You ever heard the expression, there's consequences for your actions? So what were their consequences? And they were driven from the Garden of Eden. So then what we had was called the original sin as such. And except for Jesus Christ, we all have lived a sinful life. We have to go to him and ask for forgiveness. Which brings us up to Jeremiah, which our lesson is about. And here we go again. Jerusalem, Judah. Apparently there was a lot of people that was living sinful lives again, disobeying God again. What amazes me, here's the guy, I shouldn't call it guy, but here's God that created man, created him in his own image. He walks with him in the evenings. And he personally asks them not to do something. I often thought, boy, if I lived in a time when I seen Jesus perform miracles, become the Son of God. If he told me to do something, I think it'd be easy for me to do it. But apparently man don't really work that way. From the very beginning, when he had met his Creator and personally knew him, still disobeyed him. And, as I say, the consequences for your actions. And we keep seeing this throughout the Bible. And here Jeremiah is writing to his chosen people, the Jews, that this is like the third time that they have had to have God to come down and give them an attitude adjustment is one way you may say it. What has happened? People come from Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, come down and have taken captive God's chosen people, the Jews. And they've been in captivity for a while. And they tend to be listening to anybody that tells them what they want to hear. We do that today maybe sometime. I always want to listen to who promises this and who tells us that, what's going to happen. I once sold this giant chandelier, 6 foot across, 6 foot high. It had 580 crystals on it, and put it in the smallest rooms, 2 of them, in this house. And there was a little trailer sitting out behind this house that a fortune teller worked out of, and she paid cash for that house and all that stuff that was in it, because people wanted to go and have their fortunes told. One of those people I drove a couple of weeks ago by their houses. Remember seeing those houses? When I was a little kid, they lived in little trailers, campers on the back of pickup trucks, wagons. You might call them gypsies. Did that describe any of the houses you've seen they lived in? They were probably living in the most expensive mansions that you can imagine, in the same place where they used to live in those little trailers, because they've gone around and told people what they wanted to hear. And people give them bunches of money to do that. Jeremiah was talking about the same people. They were soothsayers, fortune tellers, and they were telling these Jews that were captured by Nebuchadnezzar and all those stuff, and they were believing them. And then there were somebody else you may even think about today, false prophets, people that will preach a feel-good message for you, tell you things you want to hear again, makes you feel good. And Jeremiah sent them a letter saying, you will know these people by the fruits that they bear. In other words, don't always listen to what they got to say, but what they do. What kind of fruits are they producing? When we drove by these mansions of these soothsayers and stuff, they had Jesus statues in the front yard. They had statues of Mary in the front yard, in front of these multi-million-dollar mansions. When you look in the phone book, every one of them had the same last name. They bragged on the fact that nobody had ever prosecuted anybody that lived in that communities, and they've been there for hundreds more years. They bragged about the fact they could get away with all the evil things that they did. So sometimes we just looked at the fruits they bear. It ought to put a flag up and tell you something. So here Jeremiah was sending this letter to the captives. He was telling them what Jesus, or what God had told him to tell them. Not Jesus, but God. He says, look at these people that you're listening to. They're telling you lies. It's not hard to tell when you look at the fruits that they bear. He says, and one of them has been telling you that this is only going to be a short time that you're captive. But I'm here to tell you, the Lord has told me it's going to be at least 70, maybe 80 years that you're going to be in captivity. Now, some of those people he was talking to, sending the letter to, were probably already in their 60s or 70s. And they were looking forward to just a short time when they'd be taken back to their promised land. Judah, Jerusalem. But now they've been told something they don't want to hear. We're often told things that we don't want to hear. So sometimes we go look to somebody that tells us something we do want to hear. I took my car over to Mr. Creech. He told me something I didn't want to hear, $2,700 later. I got to go on vacation. But sometimes it's a blessing. And sometimes we have to look for the blessing. Found a little nail in the tire. It was a blessing that we found that then instead of a week and a half later, when we're somewhere out in the Badlands where it's 100 degrees, nothing else growing, and there's no water. And when we hit that 107 degrees, we sure appreciated that air conditioning. Let me tell you. Even in the back seat, didn't we? So we need to look for the blessings that we have in life. Or we can look for the bad things that we're always worrying about all the time. Things that take the joy out of our life. So there was disappointment in the first part of the letter that Jeremiah was sending to the captives. That they were not going to be freed in the next short time. It's probably going to be 70 years or more. But he also had a positive thing to say. You ever heard the expression that you bloom where you're planted? Do you bloom where you're planted? Sometimes that's hard. When you heard great disappointment, you're not going to get to do the things you want to do. Is that time for you to bloom where you're planted? So what Jeremiah told them to do, instead of just sitting around waiting on the day that you're freed, maybe you should be planning your future. Maybe you ought to, instead of living in that little tent, build a house. Settle down. Some say multiply. Take a wife. Have children. Be happy. Give a blessing to the people around you. They said, what are you talking about? They've captured me. I'm here against my will. Just like that little thing we find in the tire before it goes flat. That can be a blessing. Instead of a thorn in the tire, it's a blessing there to let us know. It gives us an opportunity to fix it under our conditions in our time. instead of on the side of the interstate in 100-degree weather. So we can look at it like a thorn in the side or the blessing that we want to have. Jeremiah is saying, now's the opportunity for you not only to be a blessing to yourself, which brings peace to you, you can also give a blessing to the people around you. You can be part of a pillar of the community. Instead of standing on the street corner saying, woe is me, help me, maybe you'll be the blessing to the person that needs that help. Figure out how to be the bloom instead of the weed. So he tells them to multiply. And don't forget your captives. Pray for them. That's an interesting thought. Why should we pray for our captives? Wouldn't we like for them to make better decisions than just reacting to every time that I get a chance, I'm going to put it to them? So the lesson here is that God has spoke directly to Jeremiah and says, tell them the truth. Don't tell them the things that they just want to hear. Give them false hopes. Give them the truth so they can deal with it. And through dealing with it, bloom where your plant is, you'll have peace inside you. And when you have peace, you can look to God for the answers, and he'll help you. He'll give you the strength to go through the bad times. And that's what the scripture is all about, is the fact is, now's the time for you to be a blessing in your community. Same lesson that we should have today. We should be a blessing in our community.
Amen.
That's right. We seem to have a mayor lately that's going around and pointing out the things that he don't like that people in the community are doing. You parked on the grass. We don't want you parking on the grass, so here's your fine. Well, you can always whip in your own yard that you pay good money for and you're paying taxes for. And you're also paying for that mayor's salary too to help you become a better citizen, I guess. But there's also got to be a blessing in there. The guy that's got a junk car that's sitting down the street on the grass, maybe it helps your property values real well, don't it? I don't know. But I think sometimes we'll have to look at things around us. We have to look for the good in those things. We have to figure out. I've been pointing out this. Now, what am I supposed to do with this information I've been given? Maybe there's something good I can do. One of the things in Bible school this week was respect. That was a big theme the whole time was, do we respect the people around us? People that's in authority. We may not like what's going on, but there should be a certain amount of respect, shouldn't there? When is the last time you listened to somebody that was fussing and crying and pitching a fit about something? Or did you kind of remove yourself from that situation and look for someone else? We don't normally listen that well to people that's doing that. Our little kid is doing that. When I was standing over there in the other room, after I eat, I had to come over to the sanctuary. That's a good term for it. It was the sanctuary after a little bit. But maybe I forgot to look. The fact is, that's really a blessing because that's the future of our church. So maybe I shouldn't have been saying as much as saying, wow, isn't this great that we have so many? Maybe they'll be listening to somebody that teaches them lies. We got enough of that going around. All you have to do is stay home and turn TV on. Yes. You can announce something today, this morning, and it can be on the other side of the world in just a few seconds. We got a little thing sitting right there back in the back, this camera on it, and somebody that sits home can hear what the pastor had to say about them. And you say, well, is he talking about me? Or they can say, isn't it a blessing that I was able, being sick, to be able to hear a good message this morning? I think that's part of what Jeremiah was saying. Way back, more than 2,000 years ago, 2,600 years ago, 2,900 years ago, the same problems that we have today, they had then. They didn't have the instant communication. But Jeremiah had God talking to him and telling him at times, this is precisely what I want you to say. And even when God was talking to Adam and Eve and telling them exactly what he wanted, they chose a time when they didn't listen to him and they disobeyed. Consequences for actions. Today, we're living in a situation where we have consequences for our actions. And some of those are good consequences. And some of them say, well, I really don't have time to pull that little nail out of the tire right now. I'll get it later. So I'm sitting on the side of the road down in Jerusalem Road, blanket laying on the ground, trying to rest while I'm trying to change that tire out. Consequences for actions. My youngest son, when he graduated from college, his future wife still had 2 years to go before she finished college because she was in a serious accident. So he said, Dad, I can't hang around here waiting because of idle hands. You know, you've heard that thing about idle hands. So he took a job with Eckerd's drugstores. You may have never heard of this thing, but they had a program called Wilderness Program for troubled boys. It was their last chance before they had to go to prison. So these were not good kids. These were ones that were given an opportunity to go live in the mountains north of Knoxville, Tennessee, in tents with no running water, no electricity, given a little budget that they could buy food with and fix themselves. And Rodney took that job, and he lived with 15 boys for 2 years. He had a little tent he lived in, and all 15 little boys had a big giant tent that they lived in. They had a water faucet about a mile away from their camp, and they had the privilege of taking their 5-gallon jug and go down there with their wheelbarrow and fill it up and bring it back to camp. That's the only water they had. Well, the first week he was there, the boys went down there and broke the wheelbarrow. They said, no problem, we just order another one. It only took 2 weeks for the wheelbarrow to get there. They still needed water. So what do you think they did? They took those 5-gallon jugs and they walked that mile down there and filled them up. If I remember, I ate 8 pounds to a gallon, 5. That's 40 pounds. They get carried it all the way back every time they needed water. He said, Dad, for the next 2 years, when that new wheelbarrow come in, never got broke again. Wonder why? Consequences for the actions. Now, one of the things I read about Jeremiah, he sent them these letters. And he told them, you need to set down roots. You need to bloom where you're planted. You need to get your guys' wives and your daughters' husbands, and they need to multiply. They need to become influencers in their community. We have influencers today on the internet. Some of them make huge amounts of money because they influence how other people think. One of the things he said in that letter is, you need to quit listening to a lot of the influences. They're soothsayers, they're dream interpreters, they're false prophets. They're all shoveling you a bunch of lies. Now's the time for you to start being the influencers. Lift up your leaders, pray for them, ask blessings on them. Give them an opportunity to see a good person and how they live. He says, and when you do these things, and remember me and ask me to be involved with you, I will bless you. I will bestow upon you good things. And I will free you. And the one thing that I've noticed, God always keeps his word. May not be exactly when you want it, but it's at the right time. Maybe we're just not smart enough sometimes to figure out when the right times are. We have to figure out when it's God's time. He says, now here, also I've seen in this letter, God took responsibility for what he had caused. He had caused these people that were disobeying him and not living according to his instructions to be captured by Nebuchadnezzar, the people out of Babylon. And if you remember, also Egypt come along and enslaved his people for many, many years. He says, God told him when the time is right, when your heart has become right, and you're calling upon me, I will set you free, and I will be back among you. And this is what we see in the scriptures, as the fact is. My eyes are not that well, but I'm looking at it and I say, thus saith the Lord, after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you, pass from my goodwill word towards you, and cause you to return in this place. Thou shalt call up, then shall ye call upon me, and ye shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you. What does it mean? When you call upon me, because you're doing the right things, you've gotten your heart in the right place, I will be with you. I will be amongst you, and I will set you free. And I will be found of you, saith the Lord, and I will turn away your captivity, and I will gather you from all of the nations and from all the places, whither I have driven you, saith the Lord, and I will bring you again into the place whence I caused you to be carried away captive. It's in the words, King James Version, but it's pretty clear is what it's saying. You get your heart right. You look at me, do the things that I've said, and I will be with you. I will give you comfort. And in doing these things, you'll also find peace where you are. In other words, you will bloom where you're planted. My mama used to always tell me that. You need to bloom where you're planted every time I start whining about something. That's when I was trying to explain to her that I didn't need a new sister, but a little goat would be a lot more fun. I got a little sister anyway. I had a hard time understanding them, but it was a blessing. Oh, man. Well, I think it gets right back down to that thing about blooming where you planted. As you know, Nana and I had a privilege of driving around the country with Danny and Diane. And one of the things we got to see is there's places that you'd never want to live, but there's people living there. There's happy people living there. We drove down the road and we're looking around. As far as you can see across that horizon, may have been 50 miles. There was a mountain there, but it was flat where we were, and we couldn't see a tree anywhere. Look around, you might see a lizard. Some birds flying overhead trying to go somewhere else. Diane says, "Those are pretty rocks. I'd like to have one of them rocks." So, we stopped and got some rocks. But you see a little path, and you look down that path. Obviously, cars have been down it, and you look way back there, and just way back as far as you can see, there's a little trailer. And somebody's planting some flowers in the front yard. And maybe it wasn't a place that I wanted to live, because I know how hot it is when you're in a camper and it's 100 degrees outside. And with the air conditioner going wide open, it's still hot. And I'm thinking, how in the world can they stand it there? Must be a happy person in there. They put some pretty flowers out front. I'd say they must have been blooming where they were planted. So we were going down towards Tombstone, Arizona, and it's the middle of nowhere. You got to go there on purpose, because you can't just accidentally find a place. And there's no trees anywhere. And we kind of top over this other hill, and there we see this clump of trees. Well, when we get down there, it's a town. Well, a community. A little place. I don't know if you could call it a town. There's probably 50, 100 people living there. But as we passed through this little town, we could have blinked our eyes and been gone. But there was shade trees, and there's houses underneath it. And we found this one little spot. Now, before we got these trees, it was just barren desert. We seen this little spot between the trees. It was open. And you could look through that spot, and there was green grass. There must have been 100 deer standing in that pasture. And I'm thinking, we ain't seen no deer anywhere. Ain't nothing living out there except lizards. But here in this little spot between those trees, as we zoomed by, I seen the most deer I ever think I've seen together in one spot. They had found that little oasis. And those people there, blooming where they were planted, and probably some of them had lived there all their life. And they've had a good life. Maybe they had to struggle. But maybe their blessing was that they had a place where all these animals could live, find shelter, water. But they didn't even have a Dollar General. We often said, where in the world could these people buy groceries? Because we sometimes drive for an hour or 2 hours. And the only thing we seen was a house here and there. No gas stations, no Dollar Generals, no place to buy a loaf of bread. But there were people living there. I come back and say, I think I'm blessed. And I should appreciate what I see. And sometimes that's what you have to do, is go out and see how somebody else is. And you're probably not.
Sometimes we do have a hard time blooming where we're planted just over minor issues. God's been bringing the story of the Holocaust to my mind right now, where Corrie ten Boom was in the concentration camp. And she was in a bunker with other women.
I didn't put it in probably the words that this author did, but when I read of Jeremiah and the letter that he sent to these people, that's what I got of it. I heard my mama saying, you need to bloom where you planted. And I remember probably in Cub Scouts is when I heard that those seeds were scattered and some of them fell among the rocks. But it was pointed out to me, see that little thing come up and there's a bloom right on top of that thing. It's pretty. Somebody standing out in the desert breaking a piece of skeleton off of a cactus that had rotted. And took that long piece of skeleton of a thing and stuck it with all it's full of dirt inside the back of the car. We was wondering if there was bugs in it. All I can say is the next time you go to their house, it's sitting up against the door as you walk in the back door. I don't know if Danny hadn't let her take it in the house because interesting thing about it, somebody was saying, I wouldn't go out there walking through there. There's got to be rattlesnakes and scorpions or something out there. Oh, look at that little thing out there. I want one of those. And they jumped out of the car and went out there, kicked it and stomped on it, broke it off. I didn't hear her say anything about the rattlesnakes or scorpions. Thousands of miles away. And there's a good example of bloom where you planted. So in the 1920s, I won't say that he was a pharmacist, but he was a pharmacist. And he married this lady. And he took her all the way out there to South Dakota. Now, if you think about 1920s, the Dust Bowl was going on. All the farms were turned to dust. They wasn't growing anything. So everybody was leaving. They was exiting the place, heading to California or the West Coast because they heard that they could grow crops out there. Well, he took his bride out there and they opened up this little drugstore. And they sat there on the front porch and watched at the distance as the Model Ts and wagons and stuff drove by, and nobody was stopping. They didn't need no drugs or something. And she kept saying, this can't go on forever this way because we can't make a living if nobody stops and buys anything. So she thought of a way to solve the problem instead of saying, woe is me, we can't do nothing. So she put a sign out by the road, free cups of cold water. And today, what is it, 100 years later, they give out free cups of cold water to the tune of as much as 20,000 in a day. She figured out how to bloom where she was planted in. Neat thing about it, she offered something that they needed to help her fellow person. Don't benefit from them giving them free water. But today that drugstore covers at least a city block. At least a city block. And if there's anything that you need, you can find it in there. But she figured out. All right, for one last thing to say about it, leave you with this final scripture. Anybody know what Romans 8:28 says? I bet you do. You've heard it.
And we know all things work. I am not reading verbatim, but and we know all things work to him that love the Lord.
Good things that come out of the fact is if you love the Lord and follow his commandments, the Lord's going to take care of you. And Romans 8:28 tells you exactly that. That was me and my first wife's motto. And it got us through some tough times. Because you got to look at the positive side of things. And so my last thing about it is bloom where you're planted. Thank you.